All right. Well, once again, the SEC has chosen to take up more time than everybody else in college football. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. This is, of course, our daily The College Football Show, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, the opening of SEC Media Days, and we will get right to it from Atlanta with a number of guests stopping by to talk SEC, where they would like to tell us that it just means more. But before we do that, let's not turn the page completely yet on the Big 12, not when we've got the opportunity to bring in a guy like John Kurtz, who can break down the conference for us top to bottom. And so, John, we appreciate you stopping by. Everybody can join John right here on YouTube on the John Kurtz Show.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Happy to get the Big 12 some love as much as I can help the Big 12 hog some spotlight away from the SEC. I'm very much here to do that.
Awesome. Well, let's get to it. And before I pin you down on any specific questions, John, what did you take away from what happened in Frisco last week in regards to the two-day event and any meaningful conversation or words out of the commissioner or anyone else?
Yeah, it was, I think probably the biggest highlight was the fact that Brett Yormark went up there and again emphasized, I know he called it doubling down on the 5+11 playoff format, but to me it was really more like a quadrupling down. I mean, he's put it out there, doubled down, tripled down, and now he is continuing to back that. And I know that it's very controversial, but I would at least say you've got to respect the conviction that he has with it. I mean, I think people by now understand the basic idea here. Yes, I think he has even admitted in the short term, it is probably better for the Big 12 to just take two auto bids in a 4-4-2-2 format. But you also don't want to solidify that you are half the SEC in the Big 10, because that just limits your ceiling forever. And he's taken the chance to kind of bet on himself and have the conference bet on itself. And when you combine that message with him going up there and saying, hey, I think we're getting two teams in this year. We're a league that's going to get two teams in this year. Just like that, he's like setting the narrative with that. And he's also taking some tools out of the media's hands to set narratives for them, namely that preseason media poll that they did last year, which, I don't know, to me, it seems very obvious that it did hurt both Arizona State and BYU, especially BYU, probably in the at-large discussion, that they were picked 13th. People didn't think that was a very good team. They were just waiting for the other shoe to drop the entire year. And though they had an objectively better resume than, say, a Miami, at the end of the year, Miami gets serious at-large consideration. BYU does not. I think that's where you saw the Big 12 really hurt. Plus, I mean, Arizona State was pretty clearly behind Boise as the 4 seed instead of the 3 seed. And I think some of that is rooted in the fact that they were picked last in the Big 12. So, hey, I'm not going to give the media an opportunity to do that. I'm going to come out here, have my media day first, by the way, when everybody just starved for football content. So we'll maximize the coverage we get on it. And I'm going to set the bar at, hey, we're going to be a 2-bid league. Let's start the discussion there. I just like that he does proactive things like that when the Big 12 needs all the narrative help that it can get. I mean, there are going to be plenty of people out there to take anti-Big 12 stances and anti-Big 12 narratives. So I thought that was really significant, to be honest. The other thing that I found to be the most significant thing, and people who watch my channel are probably, I feel like a broken record on this, but I've really been beating the Cody Campbell drum, the multi-billionaire mega booster at Texas Tech, who has a real in with the White House in terms of affecting change in the college sports world. He was actually at Big 12 Media Days, and credit to the guys at 365 Sports. They tracked him down. I did not even see him there, but they tracked him down, got an interview with him, and he did a really insightful interview about what he is trying to do, why he thinks the Big 10 and the SEC should not be threatened by him, and what he is trying to do, and how he wants to save the totality of college sports, not even just college football, but to keep Olympic sports and women's sports as things that can still remain on campus instead of getting slashed because everybody's in this arms race to pay for rev share and where all the money is going. So, you know, if you're talking about the most important things at Big 12 Media Days, to me, it was that. I know that's not the most like college football specific thing, but those were my bigger takeaways when I look at the bigger picture.
Well, some certainly good tidbits out of you concerning the latter portion of that two-pronged narrative right there that a lot of people can check out, including myself, that I was unaware of there. Now, in terms of Brett Yormark, I think we're step for step on this one, John, because I think I could throw you the 5-11 and I would take the 4-4-2-2-1-3. We could debate for 15 minutes and then we could switch and we could have another debate and both of us could make a claim for either format. But it comes down to if it was just the nuts and bolts of the selections, that would be one thing. But yeah, the perception and just basically giving into, we are half the conference of the SEC and the Big Ten. You just can't do that. So Brett Yormark has taken a stand, and I think it's the obvious one to make because there is such little difference between the two depending on how things shake out. And we've not had this alignment with these teams for long enough to go back in history and even do the math and say, okay, well, history tells us this or history tells us that. Because again, with the SEC picking up the 2 from the Big 12 and the Big 10 picking up from the 4 from the West Coast, it's changed the landscape. So you're giving me indications that you're happy with Brett Yormark. I want to see if I can get you to kind of extend on that, just in regards to, since he's taken the commissioner's role. Obviously, his role is different than I would think his approach would be in the Big Ten or the SEC, where he could play it close to the vest. He's got to take some chances, and you seem to be in favor of where he's taking this conference.
I am. I hear most of the criticism that I hear about Brett Yormark, at least from like folks within the league, is more about like the day-to-day management of the league, like the stuff that you would think 15 years ago you would have been more concerned, like the job that a college commissioner was doing there. It's like a more old school way of thinking. They've had issues with like tiebreakers for football. This is going back a couple of seasons, but they had a real, and I didn't like how it happened. I think they basically changed the tiebreaker rule on the fly and then kind of lied about it. There have been some things in terms of just the management running a league. People are upset. People have been frustrated with what they did with protected rivalries. For instance, like I'm a K-State guy. K-State fans were very upset that Iowa State was not once every 4 years. They're not going to play Iowa State in football, which disrupts a long series. There have been things like that look, I'll be the first to admit they're not perfect with that, but that's not Brett Yormark's background. And what you need him to do is nail down the big picture stuff and keep your league viable and keep revenue coming into the league and just keep you competitive. And in this day and age, that's by far the most important job of a commissioner. And it's why you're seeing commissioners come from basically like the entertainment world now. George Kliavkov, when he was hired by the Pac-12, he came from the MGM. Kevin Warren obviously was an unconventional hire for the Big Ten there. So was Tony Petitti. Like, you don't have a lot of long-term college admins anymore that are running these leagues. And I think if you look at what Brett Yormark's done, big picture, he stepped in front of the Pac-12 to get that TV deal with ESPN and Fox, which obviously proved to be the death knell for the Pac-12. And then Yormark was there to entice the Four Corners. I thought he did a masterful job by kind of bringing Colorado along first, loosening that off, and then everybody else wound up following. So when you nail that stuff, it's hard for me to complain about a whole lot else, because I'm not sure that the league would still be here if not for him and what he did there. So I think he's doing his best, with the hand that he's been dealt. I hear some grumbling too about, they've tried to go international. They have a partnership with WWE. They're going to be doing like SmackDown on 5 or 6 different campuses this fall before games. I hear people complaining about that. Oh, this is stupid. Why are they doing that? Look, again, if he continues to nail the big picture stuff, I'm going to let him have some leeway to do things like that, which is definitely his background. Entertainment guy. He was at Rock Nation with Jay-Z before this. You're going to get some of that with Brett Yormark. But even the playoff thing, like you said, we could have a real good, healthy debate about that. But I think he has taken the correct and more difficult and like principled stance here with 5+11 instead of 4-4-2-2. And this has historically been a league that has just kind of rolled over and accepted whatever narratives and opinions other people had of them. And Brett Yormark is definitely not here for that. And I think the league has needed that type of attitude injected into it after years of Dan Beebe. And I think Bob Bowlesby was better than some would give him credit for. But, he was a pretty laid back, sit back on your hands sort of a personality there at the helm of the league. I think Yormark's been great.
Got John Kurtz here from the John Kurtz Show right here on YouTube. Check it out. And you've got John's X handle right there where you can follow all of his work. You alluded to something when you mentioned the Farmageddon decision, the 3 out of 4 years that leads me to Big 12 scheduling, and I'm kind of a scheduling nerd that is not pleased with the scheduling, and it has never been a point that I've taken up with any of these leagues that I thought most of them do a terrible job in regards to matching up teams that are not rivals and that sort of thing, whether there have been divisions involved or not. The odd thing about the Big 12, and I can't determine whether this is a strategy or it's just random, that on rivalry weekend, when the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC are lockstep focused on it being rivalry weekend on that final weekend of November, where the Big 12, it just looks like they threw darts at the map to determine the matchups. You know, you got Utah and UCF playing last year. Your thoughts about how they're approaching rivalries or not approaching it, it appears.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts there. One, if you are curious about the protected rivalries and scheduling, I did an interview with Scott Draper from the Big 12, who is the guy who put together the schedule while I was at Big 12 Media Days. So that is, I believe that's gone live. It's up on my channel right now. So shameless plug there. If you do want to listen to a little bit more insight on that, I think some of it is strategic. I think especially with the Holy War, which is the best rivalry that the Big 12 has right now as an entity in football. I think not letting that get kind of washed away by all the other games that are going on during rivalry week is a part of the strategy there. Now, you can come back and say, well, you're sort of taking a chance. Whatever weekend you put it on could turn out to be a couple of huge SEC games, a huge Big Ten game or two, and you're still going to get not all that much of the attention. But I think last year's a really good example. I mean, that game, and there was a lot that went with it. You had Mark Harlan's tirade after the game. You had the controversial penalty at the end. BYU was undefeated going into playing that game. There were a lot of elements that made that a tremendous, tremendous spectacle. But it got a lot of attention. And I think had it been on rivalry week, you have a guarantee of so many other huge games that are going to get a lot more coverage that I think there's probably an element of that. Again, having said that, though, I hate losing the tradition of it. I would much rather have things be like they were 10, 15, 20 years ago when I was growing up in the early 2000s. And you just had all the rivalries happening at the end of the year. I mean, hell, I would love it if USC and Notre Dame were going to continue playing. I mean, just a million things that I think are not great for the pageantry and tradition and all the things that we love about the sport. But unfortunately, the toothpaste is kind of out of the tube on that, and we're just losing some of those. And so I just try to roll with the punches best I can. And I think the league is in some ways trying to squeeze as much value out of the product as they possibly can.
John, talk about doing things a non-traditional way. Do you think Deion Sanders overall is good for the Big 12?
I think he's great. Now, I think this year will be very, very interesting because Paul Feinbaum had some pretty pointed comments about Deion. This was in regards to Deion saying we need a salary cap in college football. The part that I almost found the most interesting is he was accusing Deion of just trying to create a distraction because his team was going to be boring and mediocre this year. And look, I don't think he was intentionally creating a distraction. He was asked a question on a panel. But do I think his team might be mediocre and boring this year compared to last year? I think it's very possible. And so then I will be curious to see what the TV numbers look like, if they'll continue to carry the Big 12 that way, because some of the novelty wears off. I mean, it's year 3 of him as a head coach now. Shedeur and Travis Hunter are both gone. And as much as Travis Hunter was a lightning rod of people to watch, I mean, Shedeur, look at how we covered the draft this year. You know, I mean, that was such a magnetic personality and somebody in college football that everybody cared about, that the casuals cared about, which was really the important part there. But now you've also got Bill Belichick, who's taking over the helm of the, novelty college football coach thing, right? So more people are probably going to be interested in that this year than they are Deion. So we'll see how much that slides back as far as what they're going to be as a team. I think they can still be solid to good, but I really think they'll miss Shedeur so much. I don't know. Caden Salter, I think he's a good quarterback. Juju Lewis may be great. I don't know that it's going to be in year 1. So I do kind of anticipate a step back, and they just by nature are going to be a little bit more boring than they were. So good for the Big 12, absolutely. But even just being at Media Day, I could sense last year it was man, okay, here comes Deion. This is the big ticket. This is the deal. What's got everybody was excited. I made it appointment viewing to go watch his press conference. Whereas this year, when you're on Radio Row, I mean, this is a little bit how the sausage is made, but you're just sitting there trying to get interviews, and that's where you're spending your time and energy, and you're not really going to the podium. I didn't even go to the podium to listen to Deion this year. It was not quite the same pull that it was last year. So I still think he's excellent for the league. They need all the help they can get in pulling in casual viewers to up those TV numbers. And I think he's a good coach. So I think having Colorado being a more relevant school is a very good thing for the league. But I do wonder if you'll start to get some diminishing returns unless they pull it back up and they become a 9 or 10 win team again.
Yeah, to me, John, Deion is unique to the sport in a number of ways, but the one that I can think of that is unique to him and him alone in the history of the sport, I can't think of anybody else like this. He brought his celebrity to the sport. He did not become a celebrity because of college football, and he's the only one that can say that. But I do agree with you, unless they win way above what we would expect over the next 5 years, there will be diminishing returns because obviously the luster wears off. Before I let you go, John, this is almost, I hesitate to a certain extent to even ask you this question, because is there really a sleeper in the Big 12? Can that even be such a thing? But if you got somebody who's under the radar at all that you kind of like, let us know.
Yeah, it's funny. They didn't do the preseason media poll, but we still got my friends, the Gambling Gauchos, did an unofficial media poll that I voted in. And then Brett McMurphy he polled all the coaches on who they thought would make the Big 12 championship game. Interestingly enough, K-State was at the top of both of those lists. But I was going to say the media poll, if you're going to play by last year's template, UCF was picked last. So maybe just by default, my sleeper should be UCF. It's not. I think two teams that come to mind when I think of a sleeper, I would say one, TCU. Now, the problem with TCU is that they have a really tricky schedule. TCU actually, I think, is a team that could be problematic for the Big 12 in that they've got SMU and North Carolina. They're at North Carolina, speaking of Belichick, in week 1. They've got 2 games that are losable in their non-con. So if they lose a couple of those and then go 7-2 in the Big 12, tie-break their way into the championship game, you could be looking at like an 8-4 team that maybe you're dicey on getting into the playoff if they win the league. But I think they can be much better than people are thinking right now. Their win total's lower at 6.5. Latest that I saw it, the over-under for that, which again is because of the schedule. They've got really tough Big 12 road games too. But Josh Hoover threw for damn near 4,000 yards last year. He's really good. The 24/7 talent composite had them as the most talented roster in the league last year. You know, Sonny Dykes has coached in a national championship game, and they were just quietly better at the end of the year last year, sort of like Baylor, and they lost a really close game to Baylor. So I just feel like we're sleeping on TCU a bit, but their schedule may hold them back. The other one I would mention is Utah. You know, I mean, Utah was 1-5 in 1-score games last year. Like, they lost so many close games, and that was with all the quarterback injury, luck or lack thereof that they had. You always know that Kyle Whittingham and company, they're going to have a great defense, right? And now they bring in Devin Dampier, who did generate a lot of buzz, I would say, at Media Day. I mean, he's seems like a magnetic personality and just a magnetic player if you watch how he plays. And his offensive coordinator is in the fold too. So it's not like totally integrating a new transfer quarterback into a new offense. I think Utah is a team that's poised to take a big jump up, and I would not be shocked if you find them in Arlington in the Big 12 championship game at the end of the year.
And to me, John, I don't know if your team, this is the year for Kansas State, but if you're going to make a bet over like a 5-year span in this conference, I would probably choose K-State over the long haul.
And that's why I think, you know, my theory, I was talking about this last night on my show, I was actually a little surprised that K-State was picked first in both of those. And Bill Connolly released his S&P Plus from ESPN, their model of K-State, and picked them to win the league. I thought this would be an offseason where people would be a little bit more like, I don't know, man, Avery Johnson was kind of inconsistent. K-State was a little disappointing last year. We need to see this, but look, Chris Kleinman's won at least 8 games every single year he's been at K-State outside of the COVID year, which they got hit really hard. And I think everybody understands why that can be kind of an outlier. So if you're just playing consistency, you look at it and you're like, well, Arizona State, I mean, they won 3 games 2 years ago. They've got a young head coach who's a year younger than me, by the way. How will he handle expectations? You know, Baylor looked like they were going to fire their coach halfway through last year. Do I really trust them? Texas Tech hasn't won more than 9 regular season games since 2009. Do I really trust them? So you just look at Chris Klieman, you're like, I know he's going to be in contention because they'll win 8 or 9 games. I can book on that. And so I feel like that combined with people seeing Avery Johnson and thinking there's a really high ceiling there is probably why you saw K-State end up where they did.
It's the John Kurtz Show. It's right here on YouTube. And just in case you're not aware, it's just a click away. So check out John's work. John, we appreciate you stopping by to break down the Big 12.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff out of John Kurtz. And again, most of you are aware, but that's his information right here on YouTube. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, of course. And we are breaking down the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. There's my name, Mark Rogers, Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. We'll get to your comments and questions, and we will drop the call-in line. If you'd like to give me a call, we've got Will Gunter lined up from South Carolina. We had South Carolina, LSU, Ole Miss. South Carolina, LSU, Ole Miss, and I'm missing somebody else there lined up at SEC Media Days. I was actually in the process of listening to one Greg Sankey when I had to start the show. So I got to say, at the point that I listened to Greg Sankey, nothing really stood out to me. He's a master at putting the SEC, as all the commissioners attempt to do, and do a decent job. They should do a decent job. They have risen to the top of their sport and their industry as commissioners. But Greg Sankey, masterful at elevating the SEC and highlighting why the SEC is, in his terms, the best conference in college football and the best athletic conference and a supreme athletic or academic conference as well, and all of that. So you get that from Greg Sankey. And again, I'd have to check my notes to see if there was anything in particular that I need to run back and run it back with Greg Sankey. He did note right out of the gate, there's a Netflix documentary that the SEC is featured in that highlights the 2024 season. That, of course, did not end well for the SEC. Basically, their most ineffective college football season since, when you figure that the SEC accounted for a playoff spot in 2023 out of 4, and Texas was also entering the league as one of the 4, and the SEC had, 3 teams out of 12, and Texas advanced with 2 wins. They were the only team in the conference that won a game, as Georgia was dumped by Notre Dame and Tennessee was blasted by Ohio State. It was not a good showing for the SEC in the playoff last year. Wins over Arizona State and Clemson, but again, losses to Ohio State, and Notre Dame. You would have to go back quite a few years. We would really have to research this, because during the playoff era, the SEC always outperformed what they did this past season. I guess in 2014, technically, Alabama was the one rep from the SEC and they lost. So technically, that would be the worst showing by the SEC during the playoff era. And then before that, again, we would have to go 2005, something in that range, in which the SEC performed as poorly on the big stage as they did last season. But Greg Sankey highlighting that, the SEC obviously put their teams and their programs and their coaches and players out there for Netflix to roll the cameras and run the documentary. So that's coming up here soon. And that the SEC network is launching a new show in which people, I don't know where they're collecting these people. I don't know if these are just fans. That sounds like a Shark Tank of sorts, where they are unveiling their business ideas. Interesting. Thought it was a bit gracious of Greg Sankey to note that the SEC garnished 40% of the television viewers. So if you just take linear TV, forget all the streaming devices, just linear TV, all the Disney networks, Fox, CBS, NBC, that the SEC gets 40%. At least it did in 2024. 40% of viewership were SEC games. So you got 4 major conferences. So they would roughly average 20%. So think about that. And that doesn't even include the 5 group of 5 conferences that might grab 2 or 3%. So the average from the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12 would be about 18 or 19% each. And the SEC got 40%. The Big Ten, and I got to admit, Sankey didn't bow his chest and beat his chest about this, but the Big Ten at 30%. He more or less put those two figures together to say between the SEC and the Big Ten, we get almost 3/4 of the TV audience. And then, of course, that went into his spiel about the college football playoff. And then the partnering between the SEC and the Big Ten. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We have left the link there in the chat. And so please join us. We got Will Gunter standing by from the all-new early game. And we've got a call coming in from our guy, Caden. What's going on, Caden?
Hey, good afternoon, Mark. How's your day so far going, sir?
My day is going well. I appreciate you asking. How are you doing?
I'm actually honestly just trucking along in a Ford F-450 right now, hauling back some barrels with a small deck trailer, but it's not a hard job. It's pretty easy. Hey, I wanted to talk to you about the SEC Media Days and listening to Coach Kirby Smart. My thoughts on Georgia, listening to Kirby Smart. I feel pretty confident in Georgia's ability to play at a high level this year, especially even after all the trouble that they've been through. I feel like that's going to be extra motivation to get their team really up and going this year. I mean, I could have a terrible take because, as I can recall, you've called every single take of mine awful, crappy, or, well, the whole 9 yards of it.
Not all of them. Not all of them, Caden. But there's been a high majority of them, let's say. So let me ask you this. What kind of trouble are we talking about with Georgia? Are we talking about
I'm talking about like the DUIs.
Issues? Yes.
I'm talking more the DUIs, like the trouble that the players have been encountering over the last year.
Yes.
And I feel like that Kirby Smart's going to bring it at least to their attention, during this offseason to get them refocused on what's most important. And that's most important is that their team needs to come together. They cannot be causing all this crap and they cannot be causing all this trouble. They need to get back on the same path that they were 2 years ago. That means going to the SEC title game, showing the SEC why they're the number 1 defense in the country, especially the number 1 defense in the SEC. They got to put their mark back on the SEC because now that Texas and Oklahoma's joined the SEC, now Alabama's pretty much a clown show. They got to really step up their A game, especially on defense.
Alabama's a clown show?
And if you're wondering why I said a clown show, well, the job that Caleb DeBoer is doing, in my opinion, is a bit of a clown show. Not really impressive, yet I'm kind of not much of a fan of him.
How many seasons has Kalen DeBoer been at Alabama?
Only 1, but call me crazy for saying what I do, but that's just my opinion, Mark. My opinion.
Well, of course, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm just asking for you to explain your opinion. And I understand that public perception jumps very quickly. And most people, or I don't know if most people, but there would be a lot of people out there that would agree with you that think just because Kalen DeBoer went 9-4 in his first season at Alabama, that he's a disaster. He's not going to succeed. There's no way he's going to make it. What were they doing? What were they thinking when they hired him and all those things? And I can't predict and will not predict that Kalen DeBoer is going to be some kind of raving success at Alabama. I'm not going to make that statement, but I do think that the guy's an excellent football coach. And I think they made about the best choice possible at the time. And he's recruiting his rear end off. And I would not shortchange or in any way disrespect Alabama football this year. They might be in play for a deep run in the playoff.
No, I get what you're saying, Mark, but, you know, we're all entitled to our opinions, as you said, quoted. And yes, I do have a good memory to memorize everything you've said to me, including every insult you said to me, particularly. But I won't get into that subject. I'll get to that another day on a dark show, whenever this isn't a college football section. But, and I've said this to your co-host Jackson Johnson over the last not even 5 months, that Caleb DeBoer is overrated. Even in that one season, I still say Caleb DeBoer is overrated. I mean, because I've seen Alabama fans on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the whole 9 yards of it, saying like DeBoer's gonna save Alabama. DeBoer's the answer to Saban's, to fill Saban's place. I'm like, you are the most delusional fans on this entire earth, besides Clemson fans and Michigan fans, and besides Texas fans talking about Arch Manning. But I'll get to Arch Manning. I've already talked enough about Arch Manning. But I told a dozen Alabama fans I know personally, quit overhyping Caleb DeBoer. Unless he wins a national championship or he wins an SEC title, that doesn't prove me anything. I'm sorry, Bama fans. I'm sorry.
You don't like Caitlin DeBoer, and I was wondering who was overrating Caitlin DeBoer. I was curious about that. Anything else for us, Caden?
I want to leave this for you, Mark. And I said this before, and I said this last night. You can hate my guts and you can hate my soul, but I'd rather be the most hated Ohio State fan on this planet than not be the most hated Ohio State fan on this planet. And fans of the Voice of College Football can hate me, but I don't care. I come on here because I like to say what's on my mind and what's on my chest. And if anyone's got a problem with it, they know where to find me, dadgummit.
Well, I can appreciate the passion, Caden, or something that I don't know that we can put a label on it. But thank you so much for the call, Caden. I want you to have a great day.
Yep, Mark, and we will see you hopefully tomorrow. If not, I will catch you up in the next time or whenever, or if you ever come up to Columbus, let me know. I'll try to, maybe we'll talk a little more in person, but we'll see if my schedule allows it, but I highly doubt it, but I never know.
All right, Caden. Thank you. All right. Oh, my word. What happened there? Caden invited me to come up to Columbus and then told me he may not have time for me. I am utterly crushed now. I have been completely crushed. I had hopes there for about 3 seconds that my next trip to Columbus, Ohio would include a sit down with Caden. I thought that was being offered to me. And then he just lowered the hammer on me. And I don't think Caden's going to have time for little old me. So I'm going to try to continue this show. This is going to be difficult. I'm going to bite my lip and try to continue this show. But it could be difficult. It could be. I'm going to hold back, fight back the tears, and be a true professional, stay focused. But just know that's going to be in the back of my mind for, not just the rest of the show, as you can imagine. Just put yourself in my place, everyone. Just put yourself in my place. It was put out there for me. Just imagine. Don't judge me here. Now, if you were just on the cusp of having that sit down with Caden, and then he pulled it back from you, you would be devastated as well. You would. But we will carry on. We will carry on. Life goes on. SEC Media Days. You know, that I appreciate the passion. I do think, though, we have two issues in life here when it comes to passion. One is passion is just a little overrated. It's a little overrated. A lot of people admire people's passion. The passion that I see from a lot of people is not connected to a brain. There's passion, and it's just this wild, like, just emotion that's not connected to a brain. I have no respect for that. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. It's just annoying and it's detrimental. So that's great that you got passion, but let's connect it to a brain and some reason. That would be number one. Number two, people confuse emotion and passion. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. Now, your passion can be displayed, or an indication of your passion could be your emotion, but emotion and passion are not the same thing. The football player who scores the touchdown and goes into all sorts of gyrations and dance moves and everything, and the response by most is, man, does he have passion? Maybe. I don't know. I know that he likes to dance, and I know that he got excited because he scored a touchdown. I don't know if he has passion. The guy that shows up at every practice an hour early and watches extra film and lifts weights extra and runs further and puts in more work than his teammates that nobody sees. That person has passion. Anybody can get excited for 5 seconds. That's not passion. That's emotion. Okay. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And yes, Jim R. Don't remind me. Don't remind me. Troy says, Mark and Caden go to White Castles. Oh, thanks for stopping by, Trojan Fight. Make it a video. Oh, hit the town one night. I don't know if there are enough super chats to be able to make that happen. But in all due respect, I like Caden. There's not a human being on the planet that I don't have some level of empathy for or care and concern for. Now, respect is another thing. Respect needs to be earned. So most of the planet I do not respect. But yes, that was quite the phone call there. All right. And I also loved the line that he would rather be the most hated Ohio State fan than be the not as hated Ohio State fan. I don't know. He likes to be hated. And so that's another good calling card. My deal is that I don't like to be hated. I think it's pretty reasonable as us humans. We like to be liked. Now, if you become a people pleaser, that's an issue. But I think it's pretty normal to like to be liked. And now, if that impacts your approach to life and causes you to do things that you wouldn't do because you're trying to please people, that's another matter. But I generally like to be liked. But if I'm not, it doesn't bother me. So we got Will Gunter from the early game there in Columbia, South Carolina, 107.5. Hopefully will join us before the end of the show. We've got a watch party as well. And oh my, we've got another Michigan win watch party. Is this going to be the rest of the year? Is this going to be the August watch party as well as the July and the June watch party with some kind of Michigan win? Or am I going to have to start taking the Michigan wins out of the poll because they win the poll and I got to watch the Michigan win? And then we'll carry this through the season and we'll do a poll each weekend on what game you would like to see as part of the watch party. And probably what's going to happen is Michigan's going to win every weekend. So I'm going to be subjected to watching the Michigan-New Mexico game as the game of the week watch party at the Voice of College Football. No, we hopefully have more sense than that we can actually enjoy the best game of the week. Hopefully that will happen. So yes, the watch party. So the deal is, if you're a member here at the Voice of College Football, then you go to the community post or on Patreon. I have posted the link to the watch party for tonight. Okay. Members only watch party. It's the 2024 Rose Bowl win, Michigan over Bama. And then I need to find after the show, I'm going to find the best full game feed I can on YouTube. And then we're going to post that here at the community page to everyone and also put it in the description section of our watch party so we can all watch along. So trying to gear myself up to watch the 2024 Rose Bowl with all of you. Guess I didn't realize what I was signing up for. Watch parties. And we've got Michigan owning the first two. All right. Guess I should have anticipated that. I was having a conversation with, who was it? I don't know. In the last couple of days, having a conversation with somebody, explaining to them why Ohio State fan has more Michigan fans watching than probably any other fan base. I think that's pretty clear, any other fan base. So I'll thank Steve Dace for that. I will thank that we had a great Michigan show when I used to do it. We still have one. They've got a better one now. But I mean that when we started the Michigan show, we had a nice little Michigan show, and I bring on good guys like Isaiah Hole and, oh my goodness, Steve Dace, of course, but I can't remember the names of the other guys that we would bring on that were really good. Oh, good Lord. Justin Rose from whatever the name of that outfit is. Blue by 90. Bring him on all the time. And anyway, a lot of great Michigan guests, and the Michigan show blew up, and that brought a lot of Michigan fans here. So I'm grateful to the Maize and Blue. Grateful to the Maize and Blue. If you see the decor back here, this was well orchestrated by myself. Texas A&M, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas, Ole Miss, Bama, Kentucky, the SEC featured today. Brian Kelly was the first one to hit the podium. Well, for one thing, Brian Kelly, now that he's been the coach for 3 seasons, going on 4, I think he feels obliged to give us some excuses as to why they've not won a championship in the SEC or nationally, of course. So he went into, in the first 5 minutes, an explanation of what they inherited. So Brian Kelly had to remind us that LSU was not a good program, that the cupboard was bare, the roster was depleted when he took over in 2022. Got it, Brian. It's 2025. This is now 4 football seasons removed from what you inherited in 2022. You did a heck of a job to get to the SEC championship game, to pull off that win against Alabama in overtime, 33-32, to get you to the SEC championship game, even though you lost 4 games that year. Still got to the SEC championship game, so good for you. We acknowledge that. We know that. We were a little bit surprised, and people were patting Brian Kelly on the back a little bit after getting to the league championship game that first year. But these last 2 seasons, not been horrible, not terrible. But this LSU team did not finish in the top 25 last year. Now, should they have? maybe they were a 9-4 team in the SEC that played 2 difficult non-conference games. So maybe they should have finished in the top 25. I don't remember if I placed them in my final top 25, but again, it's LSU. We should not be discussing whether they should be in the top 25 at 23 or 24 or not in the top 25. That's not why Brian Kelly's getting paid. So Brian Kelly also, he hit the academics heavy, very heavy on the academics, letting us all know that what is most important to him is to graduate players. I don't have an issue with that. But Brian Kelly is not making $9 million a year to graduate players. Sorry. Otherwise, he should be a teacher. He could be a professor at the university and make, what did they make? 200 grand. They could save a lot of money at LSU and make Brian Kelly a professor of who knows whatever he would be qualified in. So win championships, or we're looking at what? Les Miles was there starting in 2005. He got fired in 16, so midway through 16. So that was, we're still talking 11 years. But Les Miles won a national championship, and he got back to the BCS championship game in 2011. And, once you get to the top, and especially if you win it, then that buys you a lot of time. But LSU fans, especially with all the money that was spent in NIL, and Brian Kelly did mention that as well. He said that somebody stepped forward with $1 or $2 million. I forget the figure. And then they had like 16 individual boosters step in with $3.5 million donations. And he was just talking about how much people care about LSU, how much they care about winning, and how much passion they have. There's that word again, passion. Well, I guess that would be backed up by their bank account, passion that those people have for LSU football. Jim says BK is annoying. And I think a lot of people are on that same path with you. I don't really find him annoying. He doesn't come across as very authentic or genuine. And I would not be the one to judge that, except for we have found out about a few things that have led us to believe he's not authentic or genuine. Who is authentic and genuine is, of course, the real MVP. DeReal, what's going on today?
Nothing much. How about you, Mark?
I'm doing well.
That's good to hear. So, Mark, sorry about that, Mark. I apologize. Yeah, StreamYard's got a new update. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So
I did not know about that.
Yeah. So, yeah. Has anything stood out on SEC Media Days, particular in the first day? The season's officially started now that the big boys have entered the room and the great Greg Sankey has spoken. So today's officially the start of college football, Mark. So.
Yes. Okay. We're discounting the Big 12. All right.
Our of course.
Fans.
Excited.
But I got to say, I must admit this. I guess my passion is kind of the word of the day. I don't know if you heard our previous caller. And
yeah, I don't listen to him at all.
My follow-up to that. So my passion was at the point today that it was about a little bit after 3 p.m. Eastern time, and I knew I needed to listen to Greg Sankey. I had started listening to Brian Kelly, listened to about half of Brian Kelly, and needed to get Sankey in because he's actually a little bit more important than Brian Kelly. And I got to say, I dozed off a few times. He just didn't do it for me. But I got to say, I've heard Greg Sankey enough that I know that he crafts a better narrative and pitch for his conference than anybody else I've heard doing these media days among these 4 or 5 major conferences for years and years and years.
Isn't that what a great commissioner is supposed to do? Be a salesman, be a leader?
And it's not like obvious salesman. It's not obvious. It doesn't sound pretentious. It doesn't sound like he has to go to anytime you see when there's an inferior program or conference and they come up with some kind of fangled statistic where they just basically, every other Tuesday in March, if you look at those results, we're, the best kind of deal. Like he doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, the results speak for themselves, as some people would say.
Yeah, and he does a nice job of framing it and not acting like he's being boastful, but somewhat he is.
Oh yeah, I mean, he believes that we should have the 5+11 model because he believes he's the deepest conference. He's openly said he doesn't want everybody else's opinion, and we shouldn't value other people's opinion. Everyone's opinion is in the room. I mean, you want to talk about boastful? That's why I think he wanted it 65% instead of 68%, because that 3% difference would cut off one of the Power 4 members. He's just throwing his weight around, and that's what good people do for a company. They throw their weight around to get results. I know people hate him, but man, if he isn't the face of the sport right now, then I don't know who is the face of the sport.
Oh, he is. He's the guy, because we've had the most prominent coaches step down, Saban being the most, and then Tony Petitti. I couldn't pick. Well, if I saw him, if he walked in this room, I would recognize Tony Petitti, but actually in my mind's eye right now, I can't even picture him. And obviously he's only been the commissioner of the Big Ten for a couple of years. But yeah, Sankey is the forerunner right now. He's the face of the sport.
Right. Was there any? I know why people view Brian Kelly as annoying. At least why I do. Is because he tries to fake it too much. Like, Brian Kelly is one of those guys I feel like will say anything at any time just to get his way, and I don't know what he believes. I don't know how to explain it other than that. And I know it's not particularly important for a college football coach to stand on their values, but I feel like he would tell one recruit one thing and then another recruit the opposite thing, and just to try to get both of them.
Yeah, so Brian Kelly, for one thing, there was an incident at Notre Dame University way back around 2011, 2012, an incident involving a student who was killed. And I won't go into that because I do not have the knowledge of the incident well enough, although I've heard it, read about it, so forth, that a lot of people don't like Brian Kelly for his lack of attention during that situation, for one thing. I think that, of course, what has capped it off at LSU has been the opening introductory speech in the fake Cajun accent, and the dumb video where he's dancing with a player trying to act cool or act like he's hip or he's he can relate to this kid, and then the kid flips anyway. But even when he was at Notre Dame, I just can't imagine. I made this statement the other day. I just can't see. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. I can see Marcus Freeman obviously relating to a 17-year-old kid and being able to relate to him, connect with him. I just can't see Brian Kelly doing that.
Right. And I feel like if Brian Kelly would try to do it, he would try to do it in the most inauthentic way possible, but he believes it's authentic. He's just got that persona around him. It's really hard to explain. The SEC's had this cluster of weird coaches like Dan Mullen, Mike Leach, and those types. He's kind of just the next one in line of the cast of characters the SEC has had over the years.
Yeah, Dan Mullen was a fun one. Now he's off in Vegas. I don't know if his team's going to win enough to be, and of course, regardless of how much they win, he can only be so relevant there, but he might be fun to watch because that last season in Florida was a disaster in terms of him stepping on a rake every other day.
Yeah, I know. But if he was just kept his mouth shut and be somewhat like a normal head coach, he probably would still have a job, in my opinion.
He was doing just fine.
All right. The final thing I'll ask you about is I saw Greg Flugard, from Peak Around the Corner. You've had him on a few times. He proposed a new playoff system, Mark. and he just love the playoffs, love more expansion. You know what? He came up with a 4-4-3-3-1-3 model, and he thinks that's how everybody's going to eventually get to the conclusion. That's what I believe I heard. So, what are your thoughts on 4-4-3-3-1-3? Having an 18-team playoff.
The G5 is the one, and then there's 3 at large at the end.
Correct.
So he really thinks that the Big 12 and the ACC are going to be able to negotiate themselves into 3 spots.
Maybe. I don't know. I think it might be one of these compromise situations, in politics where everybody kind of has to not get what they want in order to get the large majority of what they want. I feel like that's what the gist of it was. But because, if you're the Big 12 and ACC, you don't want to be half of the SEC and Big 10. And if you're at the SEC Big 10, you want more than 4 spots. So this is kind of a way for both of those worlds to coalesce and work together.
Is my addition faulty, or does that add up to 18?
It does.
18 teams in a playoff.
Yeah, it does.
Oh.
And then what you would have is, don't worry, it's not an 18-team bracket. You would have play-in games. For the first 4 games would be play-in games. So I think it was 18 versus 11, 17, 12, 13, 16, 14, 15. And those winners would be accordingly seeded based on, they would face the 1, 2, 3, 4 seed.
Okay. Well, I haven't given it enough thought or been able to look at it on paper to tear it apart. And Greg is a highly intelligent individual, so I would think that so he's proposing this. This is not him thinking that somebody else is proposing this and that this is going to be pushed through.
Well, this is from my understanding, this is what he's proposing.
Okay.
To get everyone to the table and get everyone happy and get everyone to agree with.
Okay.
Now, I don't know ideally what he would want, but I think this is a combination of what he wants and to get everyone to agree. That was from my understanding of what I saw.
A little convoluted for me.
Yeah. Now, any of these playoff structures are going to be convoluted with the AQs. I feel like that's just an inevitability because, especially to the average college football fan, I don't know how it's going to be explained to them, any of this, unless we do straight seeding.
If we go with any kind of a bracket within conference play as a play-in situation, I think those situations are intriguing. They will bring intrigue and interest, especially because there's a sense of mystery because you don't know a week or 2 prior who's going to be playing in those games exactly. So it brings more drama to the preceding week. Possibly and most likely not, some of those spots are going to be somewhat locked down, but there are going to be all sorts of scenarios and tiebreakers involved to seed those teams. And so going into that final weekend before the play-in, it's going to be basically week 17 of the NFL. It's going to be us talking about, if Bama beats Auburn, but Tennessee beats Vanderbilt, well then Texas needs Oklahoma to lose. We're going to have all those kind of situations. That to me, I love that stuff, and I also am going to be intrigued by seeing, we've got this Iowa Penn State game, and we've got this Tennessee Texas A&M game that we didn't have scheduled that should be entertaining games. So I'm all for good football games, but I don't like the unfairness, the potential of unfairness. That's what I don't like about it.
And what unfairness would that be specifically? The inequity in the amount of bids, or is it the strength of schedules too tough for some of the conferences, or?
Yeah, the inequity here for me, the unfairness is that you could have an inferior season and be the best of the worst and be a 6 seed or an 8 seed, depending on how deep we get into this, and you can play your way into a playoff after having a marginal season, especially in the Big Ten.
Right. But isn't this going to be a natural byproduct of any large playoff? Because there's just a certain point where some of these 7-5, 8-4 teams are just has to get in. We just don't have enough 9-3, 10-2, 11-1 teams. Unless you want to get some G5 teams in and just solely go by record. Because, I mean, if we do the play-in thing where they talk about 6th place 3 and 4th place 5 for the final spot. I mean, my issue is the conference tiebreakers. Like some fan base like Tennessee, if they finish 4-4 in the SEC, but they're the 7th best team in their conference because, you know, there's a 4-way time, points per differential matters, they're going to act like they got screwed out of a playoff and a potential national championship. So I think in some ways this can amplify people being screwed over.
Yeah, and you're touching upon another issue that I have with tiebreakers is we get to a point with tiebreakers where the tiebreaker does not tell us who the better team is or who has performed better. It's just simply just a happenstance.
Right. So there was one a few years ago where Michigan and Ohio State, if they went 11-1 each, Ohio State would have gotten in because their 3 Western Conference teams that they played was 1 game better than Michigan's 3 Western Conference games. I mean,
yeah.
Can you imagine, though, if that's to determine who gets in the playoffs and not, though? Like, the outrage over that would be pretty large, in my opinion, from that fan base, and justifiably so. Like, if you're Iowa and your 3 teams that you play are slightly easier than some other Wisconsin, and Wisconsin gets in over you, I don't know how I'd be able to stomach that as a fan, especially knowing there's nothing I really could have done to control these stupid tiebreakers. I know I could have won one more game, but as a fan, you know, fans don't think that way.
Yeah, and for me, once we get that far down the list, I'm not going to be crying for these schools that get left out because they didn't do the work, they didn't win the games. They can't be crying. 8-4 football teams cannot be crying about not making the playoff. However, there is a decision to be made, and so I will be posting videos and doing live streams, making arguments for those 8-4 teams because other 8-4 teams made it, and maybe I did not believe the resume was measured correctly. But I would not be crying because if you can't get into a playoff with 4 losses, then you know you've had your chance, and then your other chance, and your other chance, and your other chance to right the wrong. What I was thinking about as you were unveiling that last point was we've gone a place in this sport where just a mere 2 years ago, you had to be the cream, the very cream of the crop. You had to be at the very top of the sport. And we used to talk about how hard it was to make the playoff, that you just had to be one of the 4 best in the sport, and all these really good teams get left out. And now we're just looking to continue to cascade this down into, 18 teams, and my goodness.
Yeah, it's gotten a bit much, and I'm not joking when I think 7-5 Michigan last year, if we had a 16-team playoff, had an argument to be in the playoff. I mean, they beat the best team in the country on the road. That was the best win all season.
It turned out to be. I don't know that it would have been judged that way then. Okay,
compared to their peers, who they were fighting for those final few playoff spots, that would have easily been the best win.
Did you say a 16 or an 18-team play? 16. You're putting Michigan in the running for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd put them in. If Indiana is in the running for the 16-team playoff, beating the Little Sisters of the Poor, then Michigan needs to be in the running for beating Ohio State.
Well, and I know we hit that lineup in the SEC with Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Bama to get with first.
Yeah, I know. All of them, in my opinion, all of those should get in, and then I wouldn't have it to where certain conferences should get an amount of bids. I think straight seeding 1 through 16 is ideal. I know 5-11 is most likely, so that's what I'm just pushing for now. But if you're one of the 16 best teams and you beat somebody who's capable of winning a national championship, that tells me a lot more than beating up on Kennesaw State, Northwestern, Nebraska, those level mediocre programs. It just does. And, I'd argue Michigan had 2 better wins than Indiana did all last year with beating USC and Ohio State in the regular season.
Was that their second best win?
Probably not record-wise, but in terms of talent and stuff, probably. I mean, USC almost beat Penn State, for goodness sakes.
Sure. Michigan. They only won 4 games in the Big. No, they won 5 games in the Big Ten. So yeah, I guess that USC game was the second. The Washington lost. If you're Michigan and you lost to a 6-6 Washington team, that's a pretty bad loss to try to make a playoff. Now the other ones were Oregon and Texas, Indiana, Illinois. But that head-to-head goes Indiana, so I don't know how you can make that argument.
No. My point is this team needs to be in the discussion for the 16-team playoff. And it's just because of their record doesn't mean we should immediately throw them aside. And there's going to be 75 teams going forward just because of how bloated these conferences is, where they get the wrong draw and they get a murderer's row and they go 7-5, and you look and they got like 3 or 4 wins better than their peers that are 9-3 or 10-2. It's just the way it's going. The sport's going.
Sure. Yeah, and doing some of these prediction videos, looking at some of these SEC schedules, man, there's a few that are
yeah, I know.
rugged.
Yeah, I know, Mark. Final thing I'll ask you about, and I was coming up with the scenario. I think this Texas-Ohio State game might be the most important game of the season in terms of seeding, because I feel like whichever conference wins that game, either the Big Ten or SEC, is going to have a massive leg up, because both these teams are in the running for their conference championship. And this is going to be used as a tiebreaker. So the only thing I can come up with is a scenario. We've just assumed the Big Ten and SEC are going to be 1-2 the entire time. But what if, here's a hypothetical I was thinking. What if Alabama beats Georgia, Georgia beats Texas, Texas beats Ohio State? They all win out the rest of their games, okay? Mm-hmm. Alabama meets Georgia in the SEC championship game, and Alabama beats Georgia. What would you do with the 2-loss Georgia team in that scenario? Would you keep them at 2? Would you drop them down? Because I feel like we can have this car crash of teams similar to last year going forward, because we're going to know a lot more about the top than we usually do.
So what are we concerned with here? Alabama, in your scenario, swept Georgia, correct?
Yes.
And Georgia beat Texas?
Yes, and Texas beat Ohio
State.
So does Georgia, because they lost twice, do they fall out of the top 4? Do they stay where they're at?
Yeah, you've created a situation where, you either stay in order of wins, but then you contradict the who beat who lineup.
Right. Well, it's just one of those things where, these scenarios that seem implausible, it doesn't feel like it's so implausible it can't happen, though.
Yep.
And the same thing can happen with the Big Ten, by the way. If Penn State goes on and beats Ohio State beats Texas, Texas wins the SEC, there's ways for the Big Ten to get the first and second seed.
Yes. I am with you.
Yeah.
DeReal, I got to run. I appreciate the call, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, DeReal. All right, we keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. I need to catch this super chat. Then we get to our guest. We got Adam. Thanks for the contribution. Mark, it's Adam. Penn State backup quarterback Bo Pribula will have an outstanding year as he replaces the interception addicted Drew Aller after the Oregon game. Aller has no class. I think we have an issue with our super chat comment. With all due respect, Adam, thank you for the contribution. Bo Pribula is the quarterback at Missouri. So there's been a little transfer issue there that you will have to clean up. So go to the rosters. Bo Pribula is now a Missouri Tiger. All right. Will Gunter's stopping by. This is always a good thing. We got Will stepping in from the game on 107.5 down there in South Carolina. Will, what's going on?
Not much. Now, you never know. Adam might be right. The way the transfer portal works these days, maybe Pribula transfers back before the end of the season. I mean, somebody's got to break the mold again, right? We got to break the norm. So maybe Adam is hold on to that one. He could very well be right where Pribula transfers back to Penn State midseason. What court's going to stop that, right?
You could be. You could have had something right there, Will, because that you're hitting on. When I first heard of one of those situations, that's when I said, okay, this is too much. When we started having players leave a team the first week of December and then go to spring practice, work out, tie up another program's facilities, their training table, all the red tape and the paperwork and all the things that have to be done to bring them to school at another location, go through spring practice, never step on the field for that team, never contribute, if anything, detract from the team because you're taking reps from somebody else, because then you go and hit the transfer portal after spring practice and you never play for that middle team. That's when it hit me like, okay, this is ridiculous.
South Carolina had a situation like that last year. Wide receiver, actually from the state of South Carolina, Amari Huggins-Bruce actually had played for 3 years at Louisville, transferred to South Carolina last spring. I guess realized he was still down the depth chart, and in the summer transferred back. So did his spring practice with South Carolina and ended up playing his last year of eligibility with Louisville last year.
Those poor people in Iowa, they produce a 5-star about every 5 to 10 years. Yep. They get Caden Proctor. He's committed to them all the way to signing day. Then he flips to Alabama, goes and plays in a playoff with Alabama. Then they roll the red carpet back out for him again because he's coming back home to Iowa, spends a couple weeks there, and boom, he's going back to Alabama.
Those Iowa winners are rough. Don't have transfers that still have eligibility that want to transfer again in Iowa from probably December on through about March. I've never been to the state of Iowa. I'm sure it's a phenomenal state, but yeah, that's my guess is Iowa winners are not attractive to recruits.
I, like you, Will, have never been to the state of Iowa. And since I'm talking to a guy who loves to spend his time on the water, I can imagine that, that is not a place that you're thinking about changing destinations to. Well, we got Shane.
Yeah, that won't be on the list. I can promise you that.
Well, we got, of course, Shane Beamer hitting the podium today. And I got to say, I made my way for the most part through Greg Sankey and Brian Kelly. But with all the other things going on, couldn't get to Shane Beamer. So between he and the South Carolina contingent that showed up, anything stand out to you?
No, which is a good thing. And I think that's actually what stood out is I'm watching what I believe. We talked about this on the radio show. I've now moved to 12 to 3 in the afternoon, which is great. I've been sleeping in the morning. I look better in the afternoon. I'm more coherent at 12 o'clock. So it's been a great move. But so we were able to broadcast Shane Beamer and then talk about it the rest of the afternoon. And no, there was nothing that he said, but it was the fact that he didn't say anything. And I think we're watching, me in particular, and a lot of the South Carolina fan base is watching the maturation of a program and a head coach. And I've said this a lot today. Shane comes in, wasn't a coordinator on any side of the ball, or was not an offensive or defensive coordinator. Obviously learned under some very respectful, very good head coaches, whether it be his father, Frank, whether it be Steve Spurrier. Sylvester Croom might not have won a lot at Mississippi State, but you won't find a more respectful man in the sport. Shane was with Philip Fulmer. He was obviously with Lincoln Riley and Kirby Smart. So it wasn't a matter of seeing how coaches do it. It was, I think, a matter of how he wants to do it. And early on, you saw some of the videos that would come out, the Full House parody and the Office parody. A couple of years ago, he went to media days. It was in Atlanta, actually, where they put out the video of him putting on the shades on and dancing to Soldier Boy and doing all that stuff. And you've seen them really cut back on that. And I think that's a good thing. And today, I thought he was very professional up there. I thought he answered almost kind of more of a political figure, answering in political correctness on a lot of things. He still had his little bit of cockiness and a swagger that you like to see him have. But year 5, and he goes into year 5 in the best shape that a South Carolina football coach has ever gone into year 5. Steve Spurrier was coming off of a rough year 4. Lou Holtz didn't have a good year 4. He lost 5 straight. Brad Scott did not have a good year, and that's going back. Will Muschamp, I don't even think got the year 5, to be honest. Now I'm trying to think about it, but 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, Will Muschamp was coming off a 4-8 season. So you see my point. So no coach really at the University of South Carolina, at least as far back as I can remember, has gone into year 5 in such a good spot with security. We've been talking about that a lot on the radio. Well, what's the pressure on Shane Beamer? There's no pressure in terms of you're getting fired, unless it's with calls, obviously. But there's no pressure on wins and losses. There is pressure, I think, from the standpoint of at the University of South Carolina, when you have a quarterback like Lenore Sellers, when you maybe have a generational player like Dylan Stewart, that you have to strike while the iron is hot. You've got to take advantage of it. And that's where the pressure lies, is having back-to-back 9-3 seasons, maybe getting over the hump and getting to 10 victories, getting to the college football playoff. Again, he can go 5-7. Nobody's going to fire him. He's not going to be fired. But what you're going to have a situation here is now you can kind of capitalize on it and continue to have recruits look at you and say, that's a cool place to go. Look at them. They're winning. Look at that stadium environment when they're winning. Look at the coach. He seems like a great guy to go play for. You finish 6-6 or 7-5 this year, you might get passed by Florida. Who knows if DJ Lagway and Billy Napier are really on the rise. You might get passed by a Missouri who's had a couple of good years. Texas A&M today just took a recruit out of the state of out of South Carolina, a big safety, a 4-star safety that South Carolina wanted. This is a year you have to capitalize on what you've accomplished and built to this point.
You just alluded to the atmosphere at Williams-Brice Stadium. And when a program lacks success, but still has a reputation for having that kind of home environment, you really know that they do have that kind of home environment. And I think we may have lost Will, unfortunately, here. Hopefully I thought lost you there. I thought we had a freeze, but yeah, just again, because we know where the obvious home environments are with the winning teams that win all the games, but for a stadium to get in a fan base to get the reputation when they don't win, when people know that is a tough place to play and that place is rabid, and they show up on all those off-season lists of toughest places to play, best environments, that means even more to me.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to kind of your point on that. Listen, when this program is winning, you go back to Steve Spurrier and you go back to even the first 2 years of Lou Holtz, and that stadium is a tough place to play, extremely tough place to play. And with that being said, the enhancements that they have done, the administration has done over the last 5 years, really, it sounds stupid. They've got a little cockaboose that comes out of the end zone and cocky pops out of it, and they're blaring music and everything's going on. You go, well, that's kind of stupid. But then you get into the environment. You get into what's happening in pregame, especially if it's a night game and people are going crazy. And the way it sounds stupid, but boy, does it resonate with football recruits, and boy, does it resonate with a bunch of about 70,000 people who've been tailgating for 6 hours and have lost some of the inebriation that they need to have to function properly. It really stands out, and it gets. The figure skating movie with Will Ferrell and somebody else? He goes, it gets the people going. And that's what it is. And South Carolina's got a great environment. You go back to last year in the Missouri game and the Texas A&M game late in the season, and those were games late in the season that crowd was a big part of it. That crowd was a massive part of those victories. Lenore Sellers was a big part. The defense made a few stops, but the crowd was a big part of getting the team to where they needed to be.
So Lenore Sellers he's pretty much the given that everyone knows about, and everyone's expecting this. Of course, he was tremendous last year, but even a larger step toward getting to New York City. So it's almost a given that he has to have that kind of season. I'm going to focus more on the defense because of all the talent that they lost up front, that, you opened us up, Will, by kind of putting South Carolina in this place where, are they reaching a status in the SEC where they can lose NFL draft selections and replace them and keep going? Whereas, obviously with the way things have been in the past, you lose that kind of talent, and South Carolina's not replacing it. Have they reached that point where they're just reloading?
Well, on paper, yeah, on paper it looks great. Have they loaded up on paper. And we have to joke about it because that's the transfer portal world. Last year, obviously you had 3 defensive linemen. One was a former 3-star recruit, and TJ Sanders, who was the second highest rated the second highest defensive player taken behind Nick Eamon-Warry. But he was a 3-star recruit. Boogie Huntley was a 4-star recruit for a while there and had been pretty good. And then Tonka Hemingway was again a guy who's a 3 or 4-star borderline recruit. But you also had depth in DeAndre Jules, and you had a few other good players. You did lose a really good linebacker in Demetrius Knight, but Demetrius Knight came from Charlotte. Had been a quarterback at Georgia Tech and had transferred to Charlotte and been a linebacker. And when South Carolina landed Demetrius Knight, you went, okay, nice piece, good, probably a depth piece. Lo and behold, he became maybe the second best player, maybe the third best player. I don't know. But he was integral in that defense, and how they replace him is huge. And then, of course, you lost Nick Eamon-Warry, who could have been a first-round pick. But I say all that because, all right, Nick Eamon-Warry was a 3-star recruit. TJ Sanders was a 3-star recruit. Demetrius Knight, so you kind of the backbone of your defense going up the middle there. These were all guys that weren't highly thought of. But now if you look at this year, the probably the replacement defensive lineman, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy from Texas A&M, hadn't done much at Texas A&M, but he was a former 5-star recruit. He was a former top 25 player in the nation. Did Texas A&M not get enough out of him? Was there other issues? Monkel Goodwine it is his second year in the program. He was a 4-star recruit that went to Alabama. So at least on paper, as I'm starting here, that's a pretty good start. There's 2 different linebackers that they brought in via the transfer portal. Both of those were 4 stars. I can't pronounce the first guy's last name. I'm not even going to try. We're just calling him Justin O. And then Sean Murphy, who played at Alabama, then went to Florida State and is now at South Carolina. And they've got a 4-star recruit in Fred Johnson, who will be a redshirt freshman this year they really like. So if you're going by paper, yes, the pieces are there for them to replace the guys they lost. Everybody's good. But it's now production, right? You get these 1-year assassins or 2-year assassins that come in, and they're looking to resurrect their career. Maybe something went wrong where they were at, and they're trying to get it figured out. Can you coach them up in essentially 9 months? These guys that have transferred in, can you get them to where they need to be from the time they enter school in January to the time of the first game in August?
Other teams hit the podium, along with, of course, the commissioner, Greg Sankey. Anything out of his mouth that hit home with you?
Nothing that we can always debate different things. Him talking about the scheduling and the debate whether to go to 8 or 9, or to stay at 8 or go to 9 conference games and what they want to do there. Little surprised they're actually very surprised now that I think about it. So much has gone on today that they don't actually seem to know what they're going to do. I'm sure that there was somewhere that they were they're kind of leaning, but at least at this point in time, that's a great question. I don't know. That was a surprise. Normally they're very forward thinking. It shows you how much time they're putting into what the college football playoff decision makers are going to make as the main element of that format. Are you going to let an Indiana in with 1 loss? Are you going to let an SMU team in that had an awful strength of schedule over a South Carolina and Alabama and Mississippi, teams like that? And you look at it, and all 3 of those teams had better victories. Throughout the year, had 2 or 3 better victories before you had to get to an SMU victory that stood out. So I think that's a big part of it. It's hard for me to believe they aren't going to go to 9 conference games, but I thought that was really intriguing as to how he kind of phrased that and where they stand, especially in regards to the fact that we're under the assumption that the 2026 schedule is just going to be reversing the 7 teams off of the schedule that you hadn't played the last 2 years, or do they have a different format or setup that they want to go to?
Yeah, because obviously the SEC is going to make more money if they play an extra conference game, but obviously they're going to accrue more losses. That's going to put them in a worse light if the committee does what committees do and perceives this based on, okay, number 1 is your record, and not looking a little deeper into, the quality of the wins and losses. But the 9-game schedule is obviously going to, 16 teams. You're going to split those 16 games as opposed to going out there and beating up on Charlotte and the Citadel and going 16-0. So there is that factor. And Greg Sankey obviously believes this league is going to flood the college football playoff system once they go to 16 teams. You know, he's envisioning 5, 6, 7 teams in this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the point. I get it. So, you know, and the Big Ten envisions 5, 6 teams in it too. And clearly, Brett Yormark last week made a point. He envisions 3 or 4 Big 12. I mean, and that's the way it should. I mean, that's the way you obviously represent your conference, and you fight and scrap and claw for everything. You know, we'll see what I think the ACC is the end of the week, I believe. I got my days messed up, but yeah, I think that's what does ACC say next week is where they're at in terms of this grand scheme of things.
Will Gunter, 107.5, the game. Will, I believe for those people that are outside the South Carolina region there, they can still catch your show, correct?
Yeah, always. You can download it. We're a more accessible time too, I like to think, or at least it is for me. 12 to 3 Eastern time in the afternoon. But yeah, there's an app. You can go to your app store and download the 107.5 The Game app and take us wherever you are, wherever you might be listening, whether you're out in Oregon or down in Key West or up in New York or all the way out in Arizona, wherever you're at. You can certainly just download the app 107.5 The Game and listen to us that way.
And you can pull it down in Iowa as well.
In Iowa, well, they might be angry with me now. You and I might have upset the great folks of Iowa up there, accusing them of having bad winters.
And I
think away from the public, they would agree. It's winters up there probably can't be comfortable.
And I can't do that because we've got an Iowa show on Tuesday, so that's bad news for me.
See if they'll defend their Iowa winters. That's a talking point when we get through this. When we get to the end of talking season, does anybody love an Iowa winter? Even the great folks of Iowa.
All right, Will, good to see you, man. As always.
You too. Take care.
The great Will Gunter. There you see it right there, 107.5 The Game. I believe we have done enough damage here at the Voice of College Football. Oh, we're going to go backtrack on this super chat. So, hey, I saw your admittance there in the chat. No harm, no foul, Adam. You've got more important things on your mind to keep track of the Missouri quarterback situation. But yes, Bo Pribula, now the main dude taking over for Brady Cook as the quarterback at Mizzou. But I do appreciate the contribution. So anytime you want to make more mistakes, Adam, that is quite all right with me. We'll be back with another show coming up on Tuesday with more from the SEC. We've got about 5 or 6 guests lined up for the rest of the week. So expect more and more and more from SEC Media Days here at the Voice of College Football. And we've got our watch party, and it's not too late for you to join the watch party tonight. So please be a member here or on Patreon. But since you're on the YouTube channel right now, you can just get any membership, any level membership, and then you grab the link. You can watch the watch party with us. It's 2024 Michigan over Alabama. We'll watch it together tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Wish I had a banner for that. I need like a graphics person. All right. 7 p.m. Eastern time with the watch party. Otherwise, we'll see you on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern